Geek culture icon Chris Hardwick, who started Nerdist and hosts a number of programs, including The Walking Dead's post-show called The Talking Dead, came under fire this week when his former girlfriend of 3 years went online to describe a relationship riddled with emotional and sexual abuse. It's important to note that Hardwick has denied the allegations, but in response to the controversy, AMC has released the following statement. We have had a positive working relationship with Chris Hardwick for many years. We take the troubling allegations that surfaced yesterday very seriously. While we assess the situation, talking with Chris Hardwick will not air on AMC. On top of that, Hardwick has also been pulled from his panel hosting responsibilities for both AMC and BBC America at the upcoming Comic-Con. Okay, now look, this is the type of story that I normally do not like to cover at all. However, because of the space that we all kind of inhabit here, on top of the fact that a lot of people know that I worked for a short time with Chris Hardwick's ex-girlfriend, the one in question, Chloe Dykstra. She was actually on my show, Film HQ, that I did for a while for one season on the Comic-Con HQ network. So a lot of people have been asking me, John, what do you think about these allegations? What do you think about these allegations? So I wanted to at least make a little bit of a comment here. And here's my comment to this. Number one, I have met Chris Hardwick a couple of times. I doubt he would even remember me. I have met Chris Hardwick only on a couple of occasions. And I've got to say, he was always very nice. He always seemed very nice to me. He always seemed very genuine to me. Obviously, I've met Chloe Dykstra. I've worked with her a little bit. I wouldn't say we were friends or anything like that, but she was super sweet. I really enjoyed working with her. I think she's great. I think she's wonderful. Who do I believe? Who cares? It doesn't matter what I believe. It doesn't matter anything like this. Now, it's created a real rock in this whole nerd community because, Chris Hardwick is kind of one of the faces of the whole geek culture community. Whether you love him or not, there's no denying that. He is one of the primary faces of the geek culture. So what should happen in a situation like this? What do we think about AMC at least putting out a statement like this saying for now we're not going to air him on our shows until we look into this. They're pulling him off Comic-Con. Now, there are some people who are saying things like, and understandably so, but they're saying things like, AMC shouldn't do anything. He should be considered innocent until proven guilty and all this kind of stuff. However, that ignores a couple of things. The first thing it ignores is that AMC is not a court of law. They are a private business. And as a private business, they have to do what is best for their business. That's just what they need to do. AMC is also not Chris Hardwick's family. Sometimes we think of these people in working relationships as family, but the reality is they are an employer who pay Chris Hardwick money to perform a service as long as it benefits the company. The moment it stops benefiting the company or the moment it becomes let's say a drawback to the company, the moment it becomes a liability to the company, well, the company's going to want to sever that relationship. Understandable. I've worked with companies before. That's always been the case. I've performed a service for them that is a benefit to them, and in return, they pay me money, and I'm employed by them because I benefit them. The moment I become a liability, they would probably want to part ways with me. Understandably so. Because once again, AMC is not his family. They're an employer. They're not there to look out for Chris Hardwick. They're there to look out for what is best for their company. That's their responsibility. So AMC is not a court of law. This is not about finding somebody guilty until proven innocent or finding somebody innocent until it's not about anything. This isn't a court of law. This is a company doing what is best for them at the moment. It also creates an interesting scenario because I'm hearing a lot of people online, understandably so, who are concerned about this, saying things like, there's no proof, we shouldn't even talk. Well, the problem is that saying things like that kind of looks past the fact that in abusive relationships, there is no proof. That's why for decades, women have often had to live in silence when they've been abused by either employers or a partner or something like that, because what proof do you expect there to exist? As long as the abusive person is doing it behind closed doors, there is no proof. And that's why we've had this really difficult situation. Now, it creates a very complicated, difficult scenario for all of us. On the one hand, let's assume for a moment that Chris Hardwick is completely innocent, okay? We live in this culture right now where somebody can just decide they want to make an allegation and that guy's life could be destroyed. Whether it's true or not, that guy's life could be destroyed. So that's on the one hand. But on the other hand, let's assume for a moment that Chloe Dykstra is being completely accurate. We live in a culture that for decades and decades and decades and decades just took an automatic assumption that women aren't worth listening to. And there have been abusive relationships where there's no proof because there's no really way to prove it most of the time. So you have this really awful catch-22 that we as a society and we as a culture have still not figured out how do we sort through this. And we're probably a long ways away from sorting through it. It does highlight for us that there is a massive problem we all face. How for too long the answer has just been, ignore the accuser. We do run the risk of going, ignore the alleged perpetrator here. Let's just assume they're guilty. Or let's just assume they're not. I mean, we're in a really tough spot here. I don't pretend to have the answers. I absolutely don't have the answers. That's why I'm not a judge. But I don't have the answers, and I think a lot of us are just going to have to look in the mirror and understand we don't have the answers either. This is a difficult situation. So when everybody, I've had a lot of people on Twitter writing me and say, whose side do you take in this? I'm not taking any sides in this. I'm just going to say I acknowledge this is a horrible situation. Whether it's true or not, it's a horrible situation. If it's true, it's horrible what the ex-girlfriend had to go through. If it's not, it's horrible what Chris Hardwick has to go through. It's a terrible situation that unfortunately has had the groundwork laid for it by decades and decades and decades of men being able to physically and sexually abuse women without any ramifications. And so now we find ourselves in this very tricky situation. So a lot of people have been asking me to comment on the situation, and my comment is basically this. It's a horrible situation, and there are no winners here, let alone us, the people in the pop culture, who are just trying to figure out how to make heads or tails out of any of this stuff.